Finasteride is the king of hair loss medications, but did you know that a recent study reported a way to make it 50% more effective? You'll find out what it is in today's video. We'll also see why, after a quarter of a century, finasteride is still so popular. Also, are the risks real or is it just hyperbole? And the big question, is it really the king of hair loss? Should you still be using it in 2021? Stay tuned. Hello, Tony here from hairguard.com. So, Propecia was launched amid great expectations in 1997. At the time, it was hailed as something revolutionary, a pill for hair loss. Nowadays, we take the idea for granted, but back then, this really was the stuff of science fiction, something which Merck, the makers of Propecia, were quick to point out. But how has finasteride managed to stay at the top for so long? There's nearly 10 million prescriptions of finasteride a year, just in the US alone. Why is it still the first treatment that most men that get diagnosed with hair loss will turn to? Well, the first and most important point is that in terms of return on investment, finasteride cannot be beat. And I'm not just talking about money, though I'll get to that soon. It's above all the investment in time. The time demands finasteride will place on your daily schedule are the few seconds it will take to open the bottle and pop down the pill. When you compare that to the hassle of minoxidil or any other topical, well, there's no comparison. And there's obviously also no comparison with all the major non-pharmacological interventions. Things like LLLT or microneedling, for example, these will eat into your daily schedule and they will require commitment. Finasteride is still the hands-down simplest, quickest hair loss medication in the world, nearly 3 decades after its introduction. Now, on its own, this would be an advantage if hair loss treatments lasted a certain amount of time, say a few weeks or even a few months. But this is not the case with hair loss. This is a lifelong battle, and results only generally last as long as the treatment. Just this one consideration on its own is enough to make finasteride the go-to for the large majority of men with hair loss. Now, when it comes to the money you'll have to spend, finasteride is also at the top. In the US, a 1-month supply of brand name Propecia will set you back about $100 a month. But a 1-month supply of the generic will cost you around $30. And you can buy the generic 5 milligram pills that are intended for prostate enlargement. These cost more or less the same. You cut each pill in 4 and you end up with a 4-month supply. At the end of the day, the whole thing ends up costing about $10 a month or less. So finasteride is easy, practical, and cheap to take over the long run. But the fact of the matter is, it generally continues to work well years or even decades into treatment. In these photos, from top to bottom, you can see the results of a Japanese man after 10 years on finasteride. The very first photo is before he started treatment, and then at yearly intervals up to 10 years on treatment. This is pretty remarkable considering his only investment was a pill he took once a day. The same study evaluated in total 532 patients who had been on finasteride for a minimum of 10 years. Around 91% had at least some improvement and 99% did not progress. Now, something to bear in mind, these figures are not representative of the general population because they refer to the men that stuck to treatment for the full 10 years. If you started treatment and dropped out before the 10 years were up, you wouldn't be included in this study. And the 2 main reasons you drop out would be A, poor results, and B, side effects. But another long-term study out of Italy gives us data on the dropouts. This Italian study enrolled 118 men and followed them up for 10 years. 5 of them dropped out during that time, reducing the sample to 113 men. Of these 113 men, 14% worsened. The remaining 86% either kept their hair at a minimum or had some regrowth as well. You can see here from left to right the before and afters of 4 men in this study. So what about the side effects? Now, the 5 men that dropped out of this study did so due to sexual side effects. The 2 main ones being reduced libido and erectile dysfunction. These are the most common side effects you'll find reported in the medical literature, along with gynecomastia and depression, which were not reported here. A recent meta-analysis that looked at all randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies found that the percentage of men who reported sexual side effects on 1 milligram finasteride daily is 5.3%. So while while the odds are on the user side, it's definitely something to be prepared for. But here's the thing. It's almost certain at this point that the standard 1 milligram daily dosage of finasteride is on the high side for hair loss. Way too high. We've covered this topic extensively in other videos, so I won't go into details here. I've linked to the relevant video in the description below for those of you that want to check it out. Briefly, you get nearly the same reduction in scalp and blood DHT with only 0.2 milligram daily. That is 1/5 the standard daily dosage. And with 1/5 of the dosage, you get significantly fewer side effects, including the sexual ones. So the obvious first step for someone experiencing side effects would be to reduce the dosage in consultation with their doctor. This will do the trick in most cases. But all the studies agree that in many cases, even without a dose reduction, the side effects will often resolve on their own. Now, if you've tried both of these things and the side effects still persist, then the only option is to discontinue treatment. Now, perhaps the single largest problem related to finasteride is improper expectations. As we said earlier, finasteride on its own will mostly stop hair loss. On its own, it's not enough to produce substantial regrowth, at least not for most men, and certainly not for those with advanced hair loss. It is true that around 2/3 of users will see some regrowth, but this is minimal and only in thinning areas. Parts of the head that have gone completely bald will not generally respond to finasteride. This was something that the makers of Propecia were quick to point out from the start. If you go on YouTube and find the old ads from Propecia from the 1990s, they don't really promise to give you back a full head of hair. The advertisement said, and I quote, "Are you concerned about losing more hair? Do you wonder how much further it will go? Do you wish you could do something about it?" Well, now there's a pill for men with certain types of hair loss. So they never promise to make you a Norwood 1 again, and as long as you understand that and are happy with that, chances are you'll be a happy finasteride user. Nowadays, we understand that finasteride is best used as a foundation, a starting point for a more comprehensive hair loss regimen. Now, the manufacturers of Propecia won't tell you this, but finasteride on its own is very ineffective compared to combination treatments. Just to give you an example from a recent study out of China, this looked at the effects of daily finasteride in combination with 4 Botox sessions to the scalp. The Botox is meant to relax the scalp muscles and increase blood flow. There was 1 Botox session every 3 months for a total of 4 sessions. After 1 year on this combination treatment, the average regrowth was 28 new hairs per centimeter square. This is roughly 50% more than what you get from finasteride on its own, just from 4 added Botox sessions. Now, this goes not just for Propecia, but for all interventions, be they pharmacological, non-invasive, surgical, lifestyle, you name it. Androgenetic alopecia is a multifactorial condition, meaning there is no single treatment that can stack up to a combination of treatments. And the more treatments you combine, the more you increase your chances of substantial regrowth. This is becoming more and more obvious in the research journals. Monotherapies are now increasingly the exception. It's all about combining treatments. And for the majority of men that start combination treatments for their hair loss, the daily finasteride pill is typically the foundation. This will block the DHT from the system and stop further hair loss. You can then maximize regrowth with topical stimulants like minoxidil, shampoos, and other treatments. Not to mention things like microneedling, LLLT, scalp massages, PRP, and many more, which is what this channel is all about. Thanks for watching, and let us know what you think about today's topic in the comments. Have you ever had side effects from finasteride, and do you think there will ever be a more effective hair loss medication? Till next time, this was Tony for HairGuard. Take care.